Welcome to Unconventional. I'm your host, Bill Tesser. Unique stories from entrepreneurs that have failed, picked themselves up, been knocked down, picked themselves up again, traveled roads that few travel. It's about digging into the successes that people have found in real estate, financing, lending, and the like. Welcome to today's episode of Unconventional. I've always believed that success doesn't come from doing everything. It comes from doing the right things with intent and with purpose. Today's guest is someone who's built an extraordinary career by staying laser focused on what moves the needle and by showing up for his family in a way that redefines what success really means. From restaurant management to originating over $250 million of DSCR loans, all while raising 3 boys and caring for a son with special needs. This is a story about discipline, about sacrifice, and about making every minute matter. I'm thrilled to welcome our guest, Alex Bekeza, loan originator at Investor Property Loan. Welcome, Alex. It's great to see you. I want to toast you first.
Absolutely. Cheers.
And really, my toast could be about the $250 million in DSCR loans, but it being a family man first means more to me. So I'm going to toast to the family, and then later we'll talk about the $250 million.
All right.
Cheers. You can't imagine how tough it is for me to get a guest who's willing to have a little bit of whiskey at 8 o'clock in the morning, but you seem to do just fine with yours.
Only in the mortgage industry.
Right? Yeah, only in the mortgage industry for sure. And then actually, if you go on to real estate, maybe a little title, they're probably a lot like us as well. Your story's very, very interesting. And one of the things I love about lending is how we all got here. And, you know, a lot of different paths and vehicles and freeways and miles traveled. I like yours, right? Because you didn't come from this big finance background. You didn't study finance in college. You started out didn't you start out in like the restaurant world?
Yeah, I was just always wanting to work. So as soon as I could get that work permit at 15 and a half or whatever it was, I quickly hopped into the restaurants, started getting a paycheck.
And so what did you do? You're 15 and a half, 16 years old. Were you washing dishes? Are you cleaning floors? Like, what is an entry-level job?
At that point, they really just let you either like host or busboy or maybe run some plates. But I was always kind of set on getting to that next step, you know? So as soon as I was 18, I can get a food handler's card. I was trying to wait tables. As soon as I was 21, I was trying to get behind the bar because that was the cool thing to do. And then it didn't take long before I was getting to the bar management side of things, assistant general manager, and eventually the guys at Marmalade Cafe let me take my own store as a GM at a pretty young age.
So did you start at Marmalade at your 15? You started at Marmalade at 15 and a half, 16 years old?
That's right.
Which one, if you don't mind me asking?
I started at the Calabasas one.
Well, I mean, I that was my stomping ground. I knew that that in that little the Commons
In
area,
the Commons,
right?
yeah, Caruso.
Wow, that's crazy. And so, what motivated you at an early age to make money? Did you not come from a lot of money? Did you not have a lot of money, or did your mom and dad just ingrain in you a work ethic? Like, how do you start thinking I want to work at 15 and a half or 16?
I think it was just a work ethic thing. I think my parents always got me really jazzed up about little stuff like that, whether it was helping out at church, maybe on the day we did the soup kitchen, or even simple stuff like a garage sale I took super seriously, and yeah, I think more just a work ethic thing than anything else.
But you participated in sports at school, right?
Yeah, I played some baseball and some football in high school.
Okay. So how does that kind of intertwine? You got school, you got sports, and you work. Like, where were you working on the weekends? Were you working after sports? Like, how did you intertwine that? Because 16, what is that, 10th grade?
10th grade,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, I will say this, and it's kind of funny because I think, like, some of the mutual people we know, like the guys at CB3 who knew me in high school and stuff, probably wouldn't expect me out of anybody to be right here because I really just didn't have my head on straight. I wanted to work, I think, because it get offered a lot of independence, right? Making your own check, be able to gas the truck and go out on the weekends. Yeah, and ultimately just to have independence in general,
So, but I mean, that is still a full day, right? Like you do have school that usually gets out around 2:33. Sports is after that. So you were working after the sports and on the weekends, effectively.
Yeah, that's right. And then honestly, I took a different path in high school. I started doing more of an independent study program. And when all my colleagues were starting their senior year, I was starting some community college classes at SMC.
Oh, while you're advancing your way through Marmalade.
Right.
And so so high school's done, and your career is actually starting to pick up at Marmalade, right? Because you've gone through 3 or 4 different positions. I'm guessing at that time,
That's right.
moving up the scale. How old were you when you became a GM at a restaurant?
I must have been fresh 23.
Wow.
Yeah, and had 50 employees under me at each of these stores. Most of them, or a lot of them, at least twice my age. So I had to overcome that kind of barrier.
Yeah, but I think, having done most of the jobs probably gave you credibility that when you were trying to assist, help, encourage, you'd already done it. And so
It helped a
helps a
lot.
little?
I think I'd already kind of built the reputation of like I was the guy you wanted to go to war with, when the restaurant was slammed and you were out of ingredients and everything else was going wrong.
Yeah. Call Alex. So you're 23 years old, you're a GM, you have to be making pretty darn good money. And then if you take a look over the hill at all your friends who are either just coming out of college, may still be in college, trying to get their first job, like you're kind of moving and shaking a little bit, right? You're putting some money in the bank, you're buying the things you want, you're going on trips that you want. How do you make a leap from having all that at 23 to getting into this space? Like, what does that jump look like?
Yeah, well, I was making $75,000 a year at the GM position, and for me at the time, it felt like amazing, and I was very proud of myself. But I did realize, the limits of making that, and having my first son, I think, had me kind of scrambling in my seat, like this isn't going to be enough. This isn't going to be enough. And, some things just happen for a reason, and I went to a engagement party for a mutual friend of some guys who've been killing it in mortgages. Just so happened to sit next to them and kind of reconnect, and they had seen me over the years in the restaurant a few times and had a good idea of what I was doing and how I carried myself, and they told me to come in and learn about mortgages, and the rest is history.
So well, hold on a second. You're a GM, come in and learn about mortgages. I mean, you're still the boss at this restaurant, and 75,000 at that time may not have been what you think you needed, but it was paying the bills for your family. And they say come over and learn about mortgage. Did you drop everything and just run over and learn about mortgage?
No, I was actually gracious for the offer, but trying to find the nice way to let them know I probably wasn't a good fit for that. I was kind of intimidated by everything, all the terminology, the pressure. I had never done anything quite like that. But it turns out there's actually a lot of similarities between running a busy restaurant in an affluent neighborhood and managing a mortgage pipeline.
You know what? Never actually really thought about it, but if you just paused for a moment and thought about the chaos of a restaurant, the expectations, the disappointment, the speed to get the food out, when you do a good job, them always asking for you when they come back, it is actually very similar. Like never would have thought that, but it is, right? From a customer service perspective.
It totally is. It's controlled chaos.
Controlled chaos. Yeah. So you don't take them up. You go back to your grind as a GM. Incidentally, before I ask you this next question, what was next after GM? Is it owning the store or owning part of the store?
Yeah,
was there a ceiling for you?
For me personally, I think there was a ceiling at that point, at least for the foreseeable future. I think it was a mutually beneficial relationship where they knew I was going to, work my tail off, but also, hey, 23-year-old, we can probably pay a lot less than the guy coming from Mastro's or from wherever.
Okay, so you have in the back of your head, maybe with a little bit of experience and a couple more calendar years, you could make a little bit more. But you, in your mind, looking around, you knew you were close to the ceiling, and so you appreciate the offer. You go back. How much time before you pick up the phone and say, "I want to at least explore"? How much time?
Only a few weeks.
Really?
That was around the holiday season, so I think I was, working on Christmas Eve and doing all these, private reservations and putting all my time and effort into these other people's holiday experience and missing it with my son and his great-grandparents. And I was feeling down about that, feeling like, man, is this really worth it or not? And So I think I let the holiday pass, and I called Matt, and I can remember right where I was standing in my backyard, and I was actually angry on the phone already because I just frustrated, I think, from work taking me away from my son. And I said, hey, man, is it still okay if I come in there and see what you guys do? And he said, absolutely, anytime. Just come
This
swing
is a
by."
high school buddy?
High school buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how much time elapses before you go over there?
I think it was the holiday, so I gave him until start of the year. So I was first week of January
And you went over.
2017, yeah.
Okay. So day one, you show up. Is this to observe? Are you starting? Did he hire you? Like, what does that day one look
This
like?
was just kind of exploratory.
Okay.
Yeah, just checking it out, seeing
Yep.
seeing if I could see myself there. So I show up in a suit. I'm overdressed. I'm sweating bullets.
Yeah.
I'm so nervous. And that day they also at the time Matt and Land Brothers shared a office space with Beitler Commercial, very well established industrial brokerage in the Valley with a couple of legendary guys that worked there. And I remember Matt was introducing me to Ron Casson. And he goes, Ron, you're going to love this guy, Alex. He works his butt off. He's got a kid. He's married. He's only 27. And Ron just goes, so? And the most deadpan look. And I kind of appreciated that presence that him and some of those guys always had in my life, which is like, I'll remember your name if you're still here in 6 months.
Yes.
That type of thing.
You know what's interesting, though? Like, I appreciated your buddy setting you up that way, because what that would have meant to me is this guy has a purpose to perform. When you have a wife and a kid and a nut to crack, that kind of motivation far exceeds, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Harvard grad fresh out of the university that's ready to conquer the world and doesn't have a dollar in bills that he has to fulfill on a monthly basis. The motivation is very real. So I appreciated the introduction. I also appreciated the gut check the other guy did, just so you didn't fall in love with your story too fast, I guess, right?
100%. Yeah.
So you go there and you're overdressed, you're sweating, you're getting ball busted by a couple of people. You're watching. Was there a moment where you go, I think I can do this. I want to do this to see I can make some money doing this. Like, what was that moment?
It actually felt like a scene out of a movie, to be honest with you, because Matt is attempting to demonstrate to me what a cold call looks like, who we're calling and why. And in this case, we knew the person had a mortgage note with a particular company, and based on the date it was originated, we could estimate roughly what the rate was, what kind of prepayment penalty they had. And so he calls this woman, basically lets her know, hey, I see that you have this loan. I'm very familiar with the rates and terms. At no cost to you today, we could lower your rate by 200 basis points, bring your monthly payment down X, yada, yada, yada. She's just so agreeable, like the best cold call recipient of all time.
Right?
She loves everything Matt is saying. Basically ends the call with, hey, I'm going to start emailing you the documents today. Just give me a chance when I get off work. Sounds great. And he goes, okay. And so I should bring in about $12,000 on that deal.
And you go, what?
I mean, I was trying not to overreact.
Did you think he was being serious? Like,
he said it like it was, we're going to do this 10 times today.
Yeah. And did he have any failures in that in those calls, or were they all pretty solid?
Oh, I mean, subsequent calls, I definitely got to see the more ugly
Other
ones.
side?
Yeah.
Stop calling me. Stop harassing me. Yeah. I mean, you do. I think we used to say in the call center, you had to go through 9 no's before you'd get the 1 yes. So just don't take it personal. Get excited that you were one step closer to in your example, $12,000 yes. And it helped the way that our call center used to think about stuff like that.
Oh, it's so exciting too. Yeah, if you even an ounce of agreeability is like getting a little nibble on your line,
Yeah, exactly. And I guess you're doing math, right? So if you're making $75,000, you're making effectively $60 some odd $100 a month, and you just watch some guy have a conversation where he was bringing financial benefit to the other person on the other side of that phone, and he got paid twice as much as what you would make in a month for doing that. And you have to be thinking like, I solve, real issues every day when the steak is burnt and the fries aren't cooked right and the soda doesn't have ice. Like I could solve that thing. Is that what's going through your head?
Well, and all the people problems of all the staff. I think at that time too, I was thinking like, man, I spend so much time just sorting through these little petty disagreements and things like this. And
right.
The mortgage industry allowed you to just be, it's whatever you do. whatever you produce.
So, it's interesting because I've had some of our highest performing originators at CV3 came from other industries and had to make that leap over. And it's tough. It must have been impossible for you because no matter how small 75,000 at the time seemed to you when you were thinking about your future life, it still provided a roof and food and the ability for you and your family to get to the next day. So how did you kind of bridge that gap when you said, I'm going to do that full time, but I need to kind of figure out a way to get that ramped up before I say I'm done?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was definitely gave me a lot of like peace and security and a sense of accomplishment. I felt like it took me a long time to earn that role. I felt a great sense of loyalty to the guys who owned that restaurant and put me there. So part of it was letting them down too, to let them know that I was going to be trying something else. But it was something in my gut that told me I had to do it, and kind of like that pressure cooker feeling of like having that first son and realizing that, hey, time is flying and you got to make something of yourself.
So the time frame from that first time you went there to you showing up full time, how much time?
Oh, yeah, very little time.
Like a month? 2 months?
Within that month, I had definitely given my resignation, I think within a week or two of that experience.
Wow.
Yeah. And so quickly, I gave them a longer than normal resignation, I think 30 days.
Okay.
During that time, I secured a job bartending because I knew that I wasn't going to make money right away with mortgages. It was going to take me some time to build up clients.
So do that at nighttime while you're hustling mortgages in the day?
It was perfect because I got a job at a nice steakhouse that was only going to be open from like 4 to 10. So they were short shifts. You were in and out. And quite frankly, you could make as much or more than the general manager makes on tips.
How long did you have to do that before you were able to stop bartending and go full-time loan origination?
Less than a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to say maybe like 7 or 8 months.
And
I was scared. Even after I closed my first deal or two, I still didn't want to leave the bar because it still felt like, yeah, I got a nice $5,000 check, $8,000 check, whatever. But I never felt like, okay, this is dialed now. We got to, have a pipeline to manage. But once I started getting a few more in at a time, it was a great feeling to let it go.
Did you start in a call center mode, or were they like, here's how you can source leads, every man and woman for themselves? Or were you in, here's the 100 calls you're going to make today, and here's all the information you need to know about that?
It was a little bit of both. I did have a, quota to make a certain number of calls. I had to record the notes in the CRM. I did have to call people from a particular list. And it was really funny because I found Bigger Pockets just as a way of learning, like, what is real estate, Like I said, when I got in there, I didn't know what LTV was, APR, any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I got on Bigger Pockets really as a way to just throw mud at the wall and soak up real estate terminology and acumen and see what these people are asking about and what they're looking for. And I realized that I didn't really like cold calling, even though I did have some success with it. I really felt like I wanted to create a reason for people to call me. And so
you knew that early?
Right away. I didn't like cold calling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like.
You didn't like no, or you didn't like the grind of dialing for dollars?
I felt like, in a way, it felt inefficient. I felt like I would be not inclined to do business with somebody that cold called me personally.
Okay, so if you felt that way, how do you convince someone else to not feel that way?
Right,
Oh,
and I think in loan originations we often carry a little bit of this stigma similar to like a used car salesman. People are already kind of suspicious of you when you call them out of the blue talking about lending or debt.
Yep.
Where on Bigger Pockets, I could basically just give anecdotal advice here and there in the forums, and slowly that snowballs to this thing where now you've posted 1,000 times about business purpose mortgages. People have liked and shared your comments.
So that literally became a line of deal flow for you?
Yeah, because it gave...
Without intent, right? You wanted to learn.
Exactly.
Wow,
yeah.
Look at that.
And what's really funny is I just remembered a funny instance where I was in that beginning stage of still bartending and then during the day cold calling and Bigger Pockets posting like a maniac. And there was somebody I had interacted with from Oxnard in the forums, and I think I have a deal or two in the pipeline as well, and I go to work at night and I see him come in the restaurant and I'm like, oh no, I don't want him to see me here. Because, not that he would probably even know.
Yeah, but I understand.
He
Like,
was
you're
still
a pro in this, and you don't want that to cross.
Yes, it was a little bit of a gut check,
Yeah.
in those early times.
Yes, yeah, I can understand that. So you use bigger pockets to get educated, and while you were getting educated, you started educating others, and as you were educating others, that became a source of deal flow for you, and got you away from outbound calls and just being a value-added service to those that needed, and then you were the go-to, correct?
That's right, and it was a lot easier than I think people would think, because I think that especially around that time, 2017, it wasn't like today where everyone and their mother is trying to do DSCR loans. Back then, it was much newer and foreign to a lot of people, even experienced investors. So people, I think, were really overthinking the fact of the obstacles they were facing. Like, my loan officer won't let me vest title in my LLC. My loan officer says I need 6 or 12 months of seasoning to cash out my BRRRR. These types of things.
All of these particular things that particular lender had nuanced in their guidelines, which didn't apply to you.
Exactly.
So you got to show them another way, which was kind of nirvana for them. And so then they'd come back in.
Exactly.
Personal question. Your first year in the business, did you beat your GM compensation?
By a little bit.
By a little bit.
Yeah, not by a lot, but by a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second year?
Second year smoked it.
Killed it.
Yeah, tripped 2 to 3 times it. Yeah.
That a baby.
Yeah.
And was there a moment where you go, okay, I understand what it is that I'm selling. I understand the value add I'm bringing. I understand the process behind the scenes of who's pushing paper. I understand the roadblocks that will keep this from, like, where you at least felt like I am a pro in this business. Not that you're not still learning and finding out new things, but that you felt very confident in any scenario related to what you were offering. Was that a year and a half in, 2 years in? Like, when did you go, like, I'm a professional loan originator?
Yeah, I feel like that might have clicked maybe like 2 to 3 years in, because the pandemic and then the subsequent very low rate environment, everyone was extremely busy. And also a lot of people had just come onto the scene too. So you had a crazy amount of brand new originators out there. And so I often felt like people I was talking to were having smoke blown at them. And I had to stand on business and explain, pick apart the quote from the other person, why I think it's wrong, how I'm familiar with that bank, and yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know we mentioned in a previous conversation that repeat business is a big part of who you are and how you're able to scale. I don't know if anyone really understands what doing $250 million of DSCR looks like, because the loan amounts are generally smaller than a big bridge loan or a ground up construction. So it's an awful lot of hits to get to a $250 million. How do you manage all of that? Like, how do you get your arms around that kind of a pipeline, especially because you don't come from that world? Did you apply the restaurant acumen to that?
Yeah, probably inadvertently. Just the, figure I was coming from a place where for as long as I can remember, I'm clocking in and trying to keep tabs on, 10, 20 tables, what they ordered, where they're at in their meal process, where their food is at in the cooking process, and it's if you think about it, very similar to managing 30, 40 loans at a time.
So would you make outbound status calls, or did you wait for people to call you for status? Like, what was your strategy there?
Yeah, it would definitely depend on the borrower. A lot of guys don't want to get bugged at all. Other guys want to hear an update every single time a paper gets turned, But I would pretty meticulously go through my pipeline for that day and just quickly identify what needed to be touched, But I do tell people that, yeah, I did $250 million the hard way, because I think, especially in those early years, there's probably a point where my average loan size was between 1 and 200,000, and maybe even now it's probably not a whole lot bigger than that.
Wow. You mentioned before we started this podcast that you had watched one of the podcasts that I did, and it was with Freeman Sawyer. And Freeman and I go way back, and Freeman used to start every conversation with his clients with how often, when do you want to be, how do you want to be contacted, phone, email, or text, and how often do you want to be contacted? Meaning when it's submitted, when it's approved, when docs are out, or do you want to know every step, and then he would customize his drip campaign or his touch system on his calendar based around that, and not ever assume that Alex is exactly like Bill. Like for me, if I'm submitting my package, tell me when I'm approved, tell me when I have a HUD to look at, and tell me when I'm signing docs, and tell me when I'm funding. I don't want to know any of the other drama. Other people say, I want to talk to you Monday morning, every Monday morning, regardless, and I want an update. And so I always found, and for me, just text me. I get 1,000 emails. But that's me. You might be different. You might be, no, I'm talking to you on Monday, and we're gonna have a live conversation. I always thought it was something that everyone should do, and very few people do it, but it customizes that deliverance to each particular client. And in your case, when you might have a pipeline of 30 or 40 loans, which I'm guessing you do, it might be helpful. So that's free advice
actually
from our friend Freeman.
Yeah, that's a good way to set the tone up front. I found that like really my best clients over the years have been the guys who don't want to talk very much. They really want to text me and say 123 Main Street need appraisal, and expect that I know exactly what they mean. They just did another bird deal. Let me look this property up. Let me get an appraisal ordered.
That's a real relationship, by the way, Alex. That's a relational approach to building a business, that they can do that and trust you and not have to spend an hour explaining it. That's a hell of an attribute that you've created with them.
Thanks. And yeah, I mean, most of our guys, kind of the cool part about working in this industry is we're dealing with a lot of hustlers. The guys who have the capital to go out and perform this strategy are typically killing it in something else and really don't want to be bothered. They really want that gonna get it done partner.
How long have you been doing loans?
2017.
So 2017 you started. So yeah, you got 3 years in, and then you go through COVID, right? That scare you in the beginning of COVID? Not having gone through any really major things?
Yeah, it's hard without having the context, right? Like I was in high school during the financial crisis, so I didn't really have that kind of experience. I think I had already had some success in loans. I didn't know what was to come next, but how I survived that dark period was by just relaying what I was hearing. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to originate because nobody was even lending during those few months.
Right.
And so I did spend quite a lot of time, though, still going to my desk for the same hours, still reading on BP, posting on BP. And the few clients that I did have, a couple hundred people in the CRM,
yeah,
I would call them. A lot of them were at home not doing anything. And just chat about.
Stayed connected.
I stayed connected. I let them know
smart.
what was going on in the background, what I was hearing. Hey, when we open back up, probably going to be at reduced 70s, probably the max on cash out. Just so you know, that type of thing. People really liked it.
Yeah, we did something very similar at Oldco, where we were delivering our messages electronically to our small world. And it's true, like looking at the screen, there were no buyers. And quite frankly, if you go back and revisit, people talked about real estate values, falling through the floor and losing 30, 40% nationally. And as you know, when people started educating their kids at home, people started working from home, Home Sweet Home ended up having an entirely new look, and values went exactly the opposite way. And it didn't take long. I think you mentioned 3 months, and I think that's about the right time before you started seeing bids on the screen and some semblance of normality. So look, you can't do $250 million of DSCR loans without focus. And I believe your company offers both conventional and business purpose lending. But specific to business purpose lending, do you not do a lot of bridge? Do you not do a lot of bridge with Reno? Are you hyper laser focused on this because you're so darn good at it and you built such a big business, or do these other products leak into your life?
Yeah, I'll stay away from anything like A-Paper, Fannie and Freddie, just because it's an entirely different process. I got to worry about so many compliance timelines, LEs and CDs and things like that. I'll do a little bit of RTL or fix and flip, oftentimes just because the client is potentially my DSCR client as well. But yeah, I've always just really wanted to be kind of like the In-N-Out Burger of this.
Yeah.
Eliminating unknowns is big for me, especially when I was learning this, and there's so much noise in mortgages. You can learn about bank statement loans, asset depletion, reverse mortgage, VA. And I see a lot of people trying to spend so much time understanding all of those things rather than just picking one and becoming the authority on it.
I got to be honest with you. I don't know anybody other than you in this conversation in lending in 40 years that has focused on one product and just decided to be the best at that. Mostly because there's a couple reasons. One, no one wants to walk away from a check. Two, they don't want to walk away from providing a service to a client that might allow them to get a DSCR or an RTL loan, depending on which side of the aisle you're on and what you're focused on. But I think there's a lot of truth to just being a rock star, the best of the best, champion's champion on a product, because people start talking about that too. And I think people will resonate with bringing that deal to you. And inside of a large brokerage, which bankers do which types of DSCR, and you're not going to get mucked up with one particular guideline or way of looking at things. And I do think it's very, very interesting. Probably has a lot to do with how you've been able to scale that product line. And just know that there's probably not going to be a lot of folks that copy what you do, because it's scary to give up some of those other opportunities. But it's worked for you.
Yeah, and it was hard for me to say no, because coming from purely that restaurant experience, I was a yes man. I was a people pleaser.
Yes.
I was an order taker, where you really had to guard your time. And that was a way to do it, and specializing in one product also allows you to really manage a pipeline much more efficiently, and train your processors up and really dial in your systems. It reminded me a little bit about in the restaurant industry too, how I always felt like it made things so much harder when we would try to bring in ingredients for a new item on the menu that we weren't going to use that ingredient for any other item on the menu.
Yeah.
And there was this, I guess I don't know how to tie those two things in perfectly, but it just reminds me of like going for the simplicity and scalability of.
Oh, you said it. You said it great with the in and out analogy, right? Like you go in there, there's not a whole lot. Well, the pros know how to
mix and match.
Yeah, the pros, when you go through in and out. My daughter's crazy when she orders a hamburger. She orders it in a way like you go like, they even know what you're talking about. It sounds like a foreign language.
Starbucks order.
It's interesting because you talked about time, you talked about focus, and at the beginning of our conversation, you talked about that aha moment when you were working on Christmas Eve and you weren't with your newborn. And what very few people talk about, which is the greatest gift that our space can give anyone, is control over their time. For me, look, you can make a great living and you can provide an unbelievable service to people that need what it is you're bringing to them. But never missing your son's baseball game, never missing a school event, never missing something that's important for your wife or your husband, being present in your family and someone whom your family is proud of because you have been present. That's something the mortgage industry has given so many people, and it doesn't get talked about enough. And we mentioned early that you have a special needs son, which takes special amount of time. And so let's kind of bridge over just for a moment, where you go from we're going to control all your time and here's the rules of restaurant to you're going to make your own rules and you're going to create your own time and you're going to create your own income levels, and I'm going to make sure that you're going to get to spend the time necessary, if you do all those things, to be with your 3 boys and maybe the extra time that you need it's Wyatt, correct?
Wyatt.
With Wyatt. So talk to me a little bit about that, when that aha moment where you were like, not only am I making the money, but I'm making memories with my children.
Yeah, well, when I first started in mortgages and Wyatt was still only about a year old, I really had no idea how much time he was really going to need. You don't really get an autism diagnosis until at the earliest round 2, which is when he got it.
What does round 2 mean? The second time you go to the doctor?
Around 2 years old.
Oh, around 2 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. So at 2 years old, they said this is what we think it is?
Yeah, he had experience that is fairly common, where many things were developing. Typically, he could say mom or dad. He could wave. He could blow a kiss. He could blow a dandelion out. Things like that. And right around that 18-month mark, he lost these abilities.
He had them and lost them?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And it actually happens to a lot of kids around that time. Yeah.
And so that happens, and they tell you that. And then is that a reset for your family at that moment?
You know, like so many things, I think in my story, it just seems like right place, right time, or perfect timing, or circumstances, or whatever. Because, you know, I'm so lucky that my wife actually had a master's degree in ABA therapy, and while she was in college, she was working as a one-on-one ABA therapist for kids with autism. She'd go to school all day with them, and so she had this like huge book of not just like compassion, but also like experience. So she knew right away, like, you're just observing his behaviors and whatnot, that she needed to take next steps. But this was that pressure cooker environment that I think just forced me to dig my heels in, because not only am I worried about what's going to be going on with my son, and then she's, shortly thereafter getting pregnant with our second son, but we're also relying on her for the income, right? She's the breadwinner during this time, and that is eating at my soul, but she had all this faith in me that I was, grinding my butt off and bringing in some cash at night through the bar, and that it was all going to pan out. But without her supporting me like that, it's hard to say I would have figured this all out.
And how old is Wyatt today?
He's 9.
Has the time requirements that you've put on yourself, has that changed as he's getting older? Is it more? Is there more time needed? Is there less time? How does that look?
Yeah, contrary to for most parents, as their kids start getting older, the kids start wanting more and more independence and less to do with them, and going off with their friends, or staying busy with activities or whatever it is. With him, it's a little bit of the opposite. It's actually needed more time as he's gotten older, because the bigger he gets, the more challenging some of those behaviors are, right? As he has the ability to kind of do more damage physically. He's one of those cases most people kind of only see a little bit on TV or something, but completely nonverbal. And I would say the hardest part is that he seems to live most of life in like fight or flight mode. I tell people it's kind of like that feeling you get if you got punched in the nose. I think he wakes up feeling like that. And so it takes a lot of time out of your day compared to raising a normal child, I suppose, to just make sure that you kind of keep the routine going in a way that's going to avoid those more problematic behaviors like self-harm, or getting real upset and putting a hole in my drywall and things like that.
Things that are possible with nonverbal autism, or all those. Okay. Yeah. Do you work from home, or do you work at the office, or both?
A little bit of both. I'd say mainly from home, and mainly to accommodate Wyatt's needs.
Yeah. But what a beautiful gift.
What other world could I do this in?
Right?
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Like that there's zero chance you're running a marmalade, even hybrid.
No.
Like not at all. So what a gift, right?
A gift not just for my own sanity and everything, but for my relationship, I think, too. It's like the divorce rate is already really high. Throw a special needs kids in the mix and see what happens to that number,
Wow.
Just because of just because it puts you in a defensive mode all the time, and then you're not really, yourself. But we have a pretty good 1-2 punch with that, and kind of recognize when we need to divide and conquer, or pick the other person up and let the other one go off and blow some steam.
Does it give you perspective when you might see other originators get all freaked out over some baloney loan that doesn't happen, a value that doesn't come in, a bank statement that comes back the wrong way, a FICO that was lower than it's supposed to be, and they lost a deal, and they're getting all emotional about it? And when you're thinking about, like, hey, pal, like, do you have that perspective?
I was going to say,
business?
I'm glad you asked it that way, because I think stress really is a perspective thing. And I usually just laugh, but I'll have a pretty hard time hearing it from anybody that they're tired, or that they're stressed about their pipeline, or they're stressed about this and that, because, I've gone through all of those same things, while, watching my son, bludgeon himself in the head and trying to avoid that. Yeah. And
Yeah, that's tough. Like you're quite the man to not bring all that back to that person who's bitching and moaning about the Smith deal, and just to be able to kind of smile and get them back on course, knowing that you have real life perspective there, right? Like
you're not going to last long in mortgages or real estate or anything if you don't already kind of have on to the next one mentality with things are going to go wrong.
do you have kind of like your own superpower to be able to do this kind of volume? I mean, because we're talking about what was your volume last year, if you don't mind me asking?
48 and change.
So just under 50 million, and that's 5 to 7 loans per million. Is that about right?
Oh yeah, could be something like that.
So
yeah.
you're averaging 25 plus loans a month?
Yeah.
So if you're averaging 25 plus loans a month, you have a pipeline of like 40 to 50, right? Like there's always like a lag. Like that's a massive pipeline.
Yeah, part of it is the cumulative or snowballing effect of just really going after the burr strategy. I marketed myself as Alex Bekeza, the burr lender on Instagram. The idea at that time being, I'm going to get all these RTL to DSCR 1-2 punches. And in reality, it ended up becoming more like 90% DSCR. Figure a lot of my clients have some type of, either they go all cash on the front or some type of unique 100% private money relationship on the front. But by attacking the burr strategy, you're naturally going to end up with clients whose entire strategy is about scaling. So, figure you get a dozen, 25, 50 of those guys, and all of them are trying their darndest to do a deal a month.
Yeah, so your repeat customers, when their file comes in, the only potential hiccup is maybe an appraisal, right?
Right.
Everything else, they're qualified. New people, can you determine pretty darn quick whether someone's going to get over the finish line or not?
Yeah, I always love when I hear conventional guys, kind of dismiss DSCR as too complicated or something like that. It's really so much easier.
It really is.
I mean, the questions that we have to know to get you a dialed-in quote is very few. What's the value? What's your FICO? What's the rent, taxes, insurance?
Yeah.
Quick scrub, DSCR.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned burr. Do you apply burr to your own personal strategy? Do you own any doors? Does it work the same way that you tell other people it should work? Like,
yeah. The chef eats the food too.
Yes. Okay.
And I use DSCR for all my takeouts on the burrs. I have 24 units. 21 of them are in St. Louis, Missouri, and then I have a triplex in Abilene, Texas.
So when you decided I'm going to buy my first property, was that also in Missouri?
It was in Missouri, and like a lot of people, I had been on BP for a couple years. I'm killing it in some kind of real estate lane, but I have analysis paralysis or shiny object syndrome, like a lot of people I run into all the time now as clients, where all of a sudden Airbnb sounds super cool, or flipping sounds super cool, burr in the Midwest sounds cool. But I found myself right place, right time on a gotta make a decision type of situation. I had been going to local real estate investor meetups in the Valley around me, any chance I could get, just to one more chance to talk to investors and get your name out there and potentially get some clients. And one guy, he was born and raised in St. Louis, but now he was here working in the music industry, became close friends with him, did a handful of loans for him, and was kind of there for him when shit hit the fan during the pandemic. Working in music, all the shows he was working on were canceled immediately when he couldn't show up at these studios. He couldn't send the plumbers or electricians or anybody to the flips that he had going. And he had this one deal that I knew the loan had ballooned. I knew that no lender had any idea what was going on, so they weren't really handing out extensions as easily as they might be today.
Right.
His FICO had sank because of everything going on. And I knew he had really no choice but to sell it. But he did complete the rehab. He was in a good position on it. Should be fine. But nobody was really as aggressive buying during that time either.
Right.
So naturally,
Scary times.
It was going to sit. And so between a couple years of good loan origination commissions and some retirement savings and everything, I had roughly $100,000 to my name. Figure there's no toilet paper on the shelves at the grocery store. and I'm working up the nerve to tell my wife I want to put all of our cash in on our first purchase. Wow. But first I talk to him and I say, hey man, you know, my relationship with you is more important than this deal, but I really wanted to throw it out there. Hope you don't take this the wrong way, but that I would pay you what you owe the lender, all cash, no questions asked, move as fast as
Get him out of the obligation, let him focus on something else effectively.
Yeah, because not only that, a foreclosure would wreck his.
Right.
He was trying to become a full-time real estate investor, and that was going to sabotage it. So to walk away unscathed from this one, I had a good feeling was going to work. He sat on it for a day or two, and I think there was also a little bit of like, oh heck yeah, I get to see Alex walk with his first deal. I feel good about this.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so you took out his note for 80 some odd thousand.
Yeah, I paid $89,000 cash.
And this you said was $1,200, $1,250 a month.
$1,250 a month in rent.
Okay, so you got some good cash flow, right? You're only paying taxes and insurance effectively, whatever little maintenance stuff you'd have. So that's good.
Yeah, and then so my whole life is tied up on this deal, and then 2-3 months later, DSCR lenders started to kind of reopen the doors a little bit. I applied for a product that had like no seasoning, cash out refi, and was able to get without a penny of rehab because he had already done it, 75% LTV, which was like 86 and change. So I left almost nothing in there.
Wow, look at you! And you still own that property?
Still own that property.
That's cool. That's very cool. Still got the same loan, or have you?
No, I cashed it out once.
You did?
Yeah, because things shot up.
Yeah.
In the following years. So, yeah, a couple of years later, I think I took out like 30 grand.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
That's great. And you got the other properties. So, like Missouri, was that one of the things on the chats where people were running to Missouri? So you were watching other people have success, and you said, "I'm going to do the same."
It was definitely one of those like usual suspect markets that people try to crack into, particularly from out of state. You know, St. Louis, Cleveland, Memphis, these types of places. I just happened to have a couple of very active clients there. He wasn't the only one, the seller in that case. I had another woman who I had done like 40 loans for over the course of a couple of years, all in that same zip code. So for me, just like with lending, it was a way to eliminate unknowns. I'm always just trying to eliminate unknowns. And I was able to, figure out, okay, here's the buy box. Look at all these appraisals I have that match these characteristics in terms of bed bath count, square footage. And so I felt very confident in knowing what the ARV is on this type of deal. Ah,
okay. And so you went from buying that one property in COVID, that's 2020-ish, to, you said you have how many doors?
24.
24, and that's how many properties?
12.
Does that take a lot of your time to manage that?
I have a really good team, and I kind of got with them organically. Originally, I went with the property management company that was recommended by the realtor, which up front there wasn't anything wrong with, but they, in retrospect, I realized, their office is 45 minutes plus from my properties. I'm low on their totem pole. They manage over 1,000 units. It's not that many employees. That's a lot. And, I felt things kind of falling by the wayside here and there. And eventually I moved things over to more of like an individual project manager type person because I had been lucky enough to work with him in various capacities. Like he was a leasing agent, renting out one of my apartments.
So he's local too?
He's local to St. Louis. Yeah. I funded a couple flips for him.
Okay.
So he's a local flipper and contractor. I had him and his sister take over all my properties, and they only have a handful of clients that are really like me. Usually they got 20 to 40 doors or whatever.
That's so 21. And what would you say on a 40-hour work week that would take in terms of time from you to either review, deal with challenges, legal issues, all that stuff? Is that an hour a week? Is it 5 hours a week?
Yeah, at this point, 1 to 2 hours a week.
Okay. And do you have is your goal to get more properties under your belt?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a lot of people. Ultimately, my goal would be to retire early and live on passive rental income. And BRRRR is really the only way I see to do that when you're starting with nothing, because you're able to recycle that capital, ideally.
Some people listening might say you're already retired, that you get to stay at home, you get to help people, you get paid very good to do it. And the excess money you have, you get to buy real estate. Like, the whole thing about retirement for guys like us in this space, it's like, so what are you going to do? You're going to look out your window and you're going to watch flowers grow? No, like there's something to be said about having a purpose when you're bringing value to folks the way that we do. using finance to do that. We're kind of already retired. So
I guess I say that, but also at the same time, I can't imagine ever not really working or
Right.
wanting to work or
Right.
go do something.
Yes.
But I suppose just the freedom to have that be whatever challenge I want to do.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
get that.
Yeah.
When you do, are you a New Year's resolution type of guy? Do you ever write any down?
I'm really not.
No. So you don't have a set goal for 26 that says I'm adding 5 doors, or I'm adding 2, or I'm going to add some doors closer to where I live.
I know, and I think this drives some of my mentors insane. That I really just have more of a show up and go hard in the paint every single day type
That's
of
interesting.
mentality.
Yeah, I'm exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I have so many resolutions that are broken down into business and finance, and my relationship with my wife, my family, vacations, community, my business, that I try to monitor them. I've never once in my life, in doing this for a long time, ever hit them all. But I try to hit as many as I can because I'm thoughtful in the way that I go about it. And as I would think about doors, if I was accumulating doors, I might say I want to add 3, or I want to dispose of 2, or whatever it is. You're just grind. I like it. I mean, I think it's interesting. It's an interesting strategy. What is different about your strategy than maybe from mine is you're not afraid of the miles that separate you from your assets when you think about Missouri and California. Like, there's a lot of real estate between you and that. So you found people that you know, like, and trust to manage it, and you're good. For me, I need to be fairly close. It's an old school weird thing that I have. I don't find myself personally going, I think right now today, the farthest I've ever gone is like Idaho, but it's really West Coast. I just need to know that I can get to it quick and see it and touch it. I'm just strange that way.
No, I don't. I totally get it, and I think I have some of the same inclinations, but I wouldn't be able to scale the way that I'm doing it or as fast as I'm doing it without delegating a lot.
Yeah.
And putting a lot of faith into a couple people.
And I mean, my God, if you really got started in this business in 17, you're 8 years in, you got over 20 doors, you've done $250 million of DSCR, you're getting to do this while you're thriving as a family man, as a father, and you're still got a pipeline of 40 to 50. I don't know. It sounds like a pretty good life worth living right there. Like, you're making shit happen. Like, that's pretty incredible.
I feel that way.
It really is.
And in a weird way, both things, the investing and the DSCR originations, almost get easier as they go because, naturally you have all that repeat business on the DSCR side. You always got to be very aware of what's going on and how to be nimble and everything. But on the investing side, what happens is you develop a track record. It just gets easier and easier to borrow money because you can demonstrate, hey, I've done this before. Hey, I'm not doing anything I haven't done exactly 10 times already.
I also think maybe your customers, you must have had some customers that have asked you, do you apply the burr? And to actually authentically say that you have, I think is meaningful to folks. I believe it.
I'm sure I'm not the only loan officer that does burr, but I think it's a huge separating factor when you get them on the phone. And depending on who I'm talking to, I'll identify right away whether I need to let them know or not.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's the pro in you. Yeah. What is the best single bit of advice anyone's ever given you as it relates to our business? Not in business, but our business.
This is a simple one, but it's so true, is under promise and over deliver.
Yeah.
If you use that as a mantra and show good faith on every transaction, you're naturally not going to have all this anxiety and stress about your job that you would have otherwise.
So in that example, if I was your customer and I'm not repeat, someone referred me to you, do you have a set standard of things you do? Like, you put me on the calendar, I'm going to call you at 12. You're going to take me through a series of questions, or walk me through our first meeting together where you're going to under promise and over deliver. Like, are you seeking info from me? Are you letting me talk more? Are you talking more? Like, what is it?
Yeah, that's actually, I'm glad you added that to the question, because I identified that early, especially with the cold calling. You're lucky enough to have someone that's even going to give you the time of day. But if you can get them to start talking about their story, especially in our industry, a lot of these real estate investors, they like to, I don't want to say showboat or anything,
like to share.
They like to tell you what they're doing. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. You know what's interesting, Alex? Like I have taken some of our newbies and some of our most experienced AEs on meetings with myself, and or they've asked me, hey, they got a whale on the line. Would I be willing to get on a Zoom or something? And I'm always willing to do that. And what everyone will tell you is we'll talk. It'll be an hour scheduled meeting, and the first 45 minutes has nothing to do with lending or CV3 or me. It's them, their family, their interests, their story, their passions. It's all just learning, because how the heck can you solve any problems if you don't know who you're solving them for? And so I think it's just people are so eager to say, I got 6 1/4, 30-year fix, and I do it at half a point with 3-year prepay. They want to get that out of their mouth so quick and not actually learn who Alex is and whether or not he even cares.
You know, people trip out on this. How often I know I got the deal after a conversation and we didn't even talk about the rate. We didn't even bring it up.
Yeah.
It was really just about a general process, how we do things. Here's what I need from you in order to get you pricing. But mainly it was just a vibe check, you know. And what's so funny about we talked about all the cool things our industry can afford us in terms of our time. For all the things that take me away from work, like coaching baseball or attending a school function or something like that, I've never once sensed that a client was upset when I told them, hey, you know what? I'm stepping into baseball practice, but as soon as I'm out tonight, I'll handle this.
Yes, never.
As a matter of fact, that's almost better than if I just did it right away.
I actually think to flip the script, if they did have a problem with that, then you might choose, me knowing you, might choose that this might not be a good fit for us too, because my family's part of my life. And if you're going to be part of my life, then you need to know that. And if you have a problem with that, then you know, by the law of distinction, we're not going to be connected. Exactly. So I agree with that. Have you ever done a SWOT analysis on yourself, or even thought about it, like the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats? It could be on you, it could be on your business, but if I'm kind of putting you on the spot, so apologies if you haven't, no problem. But like, what do you think your strength is? If I asked you quick, like something that you as an originator, you as a finance professional, what's the strength of Alex?
Nimbleness and honesty. You know, I raising 3 kids, especially one as unpredictable as Wyatt, you have to be nimble.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is very hard to plan any kind of normal routine because you really don't know what that next day is going to bring with him.
Yeah.
And you got to carry that into the loan space because these are transactions with a ton of different moving parts.
Yeah, I always say I like doing business with people I know, like, and trust. And the trust and the honesty part is obviously the most important, because they could be the most wonderful person in the world. You don't trust them, it doesn't matter. What about weaknesses? If you had to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, Alex, hey, Alex, your weakness is X and we're going to work on this, what would that be?
I mean, the one weakness that is, I'll say, sometimes out of my control, sometimes within my control, is the amount of time. My personality is kind of a workaholic, so sometimes it actually really does kill me not to do those 10-hour days.
Yeah.
So for me, a big weakness is bandwidth, personal bandwidth with the kids, especially Wyatt. But I think I make up for that by the hours that I am in the cockpit are no BS.
Yeah, it's a good weakness to have, because the weakness is backstopped by family. So it's a good weakness. As you look out into the marketplace, you see any particular opportunities where you go, like, even though you don't do the resolutions and you're head down and boring forward, do you see opportunities in the space that got you excited?
Yeah, I mean, even in 2026, it still feels like a lot of our industry is archaic. You know, most of these banks, I think, have a pretty weak tech stack, to be honest with you. So we're working on some pretty exciting things just to remove more and more friction from the process of obtaining a DSCR loan.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then what about threats? Threats for our space, threats to you as an originator, threats to the industry?
Yeah, the threat is almost the same as the opportunity, because I feel a ticking time bomb right now with AI and all these things. And I say to myself, wow, if an AI studied my inbox for the last 4 or 5 years and could essentially mimic me, then what is my utility, you know?
If it makes you feel any better, I heard the same crap when the internet came on. And yes, it's true. When I started, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have computers the way that we have today. And the internet was gonna replace the loan officer. And I still think people want to press palms. But I think loans are going to be done a lot faster and a lot more predictable, and your access to information is going to be greater, and your ability to scale from 25 or 40 to 50 or 60 will be more real because of what AI brings in some of the more manual steps and processes along the loan origination journey. I think that's very, very real.
Yeah.
We're seeing that.
Yeah, and then I think in the last year or so, the other opportunity that we've been seizing is really the fact that, doing business purpose mortgages is a lot less red tape than with conventional. Not only can we do these in most states, but there's also no problem with like referrals, right? So we'll engage, even though we're only doing like retail business, and these aren't people that are brokering us loans. They're not mortgage brokers. They are people who have a lot of very high touch with investors.
Yeah.
Maybe they're property managers. Maybe they run a turnkey company.
Yep.
Maybe they're just selling education on social media. Anything like that, where I meet someone who I can build a relationship with, or oftentimes I'm their loan officer, but I determine they also have this other huge audience. That's been a very lucrative path.
I know.
Yeah.
Big difference between that and conventional lending, where you can't give
Yeah.
a gift or services greater than $25 and violating RESPA, and I agree. That's a big plus. Alex, if somebody needed to get a hold of you, how could they do that?
Email's great. Alex@investorpropertyloan.com. I'm also on Instagram a little bit. Alex Bekeza, the Burr Lender. And of course, you can check me out on Bigger Pockets too.
On the Burr Lender, is that the BRR? How many R's in that?
4 R's.
4 R's. Okay. All right, the Burr Lender. Well, it's Alex. I'm very, very proud of you. I'm excited for what's going on in your life. Very proud that you had the courage to leap out of something which I would have said you're shackled to, having a child and a wife and being a GM at a restaurant. That's something people can't break apart of. And not only did you do it, you did it in a big, beautiful way. And you're making a name for yourself in our space. And it was a pleasure to spend the time this morning with you, drinking whiskey and talking DSCR shop and family. God bless you.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Every story reminds us that being unconventional isn't just about business. It's about people, purpose, and possibility. At CV3, that's what drives us every day. To think differently, to lead by example, and to help others thrive. Follow us on social at CV3 Financial and see how we're redefining what it means to do things differently in real estate, investing, and beyond. Go be unconventional.